Every now and then you hear something that just makes you scratch your head and say, am I still in America? For example, in Tennessee, some state officials investigating a series of reports where police are apparently seizing property by people. For example, a New Jersey insurance adjuster got stopped on Interstate 40 near Monterey, Tennessee. Now, he had $22,000 in cash. He was traveling across country, planned to buy a used car for his return trip. The police seized his cash. They never even charged him with a crime. And the reporter asked the officer if he had any proof that the cash was involved in drugs. He said no, but the man couldn't prove it wasn't involved in drugs. A little guilty before proven innocent there. Brown County, Wisconsin, Drug Task Force under scrutiny because they seized people's bail money. Beverly Greer had a son who got arrested and was told that the $7,500 bail had to be paid in cash because that state does not allow bail bondsmen. So she cashed her disability check and her tax refund. She got all of the relatives she could get to hit the ATMs and scraped up $7,500. They took the money into the police station, and the police had a drug-sniffing dog who sniffed it and detected drug residue. So they confiscated her money and left her son in jail. Now, she told him the money was just from the bank, so they're going to have to get all the money in all the banks. Even after she produced the ATM receipts, she still had to hire a lawyer, and it took her 4 months to get her money back. Now, these are not isolated incidences. All over the country, people are having property, whether it's a car or cash, seized, and they haven't even been charged with a crime. Now, you may be upset that people are drug dealers. I get that. But you need to be equally, if not more, upset that people are having their personal property confiscated without a due process of law. And somebody who understands the constitutional rights that you should have in this country is my good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. He is the Fox News senior judicial analyst. He's got a book out called It's Dangerous to Be Right When the Government is Wrong. And he joins me here on the Mike Huckabee Show. Judge, it is a delight to have you back.
Governor, what a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with you. And that music that they played at the introduction of this segment, it sounds better because it's played by the great Joseph Salvia.
And he is beaming from one side of his face to the other for you having said that.
You got a great team, Mike, and it's always a pleasure to work with you in any environment in which you call me.
Well, thank you. Judge, this just about makes me a hardcore libertarian. When I see stuff like this...
Joey, would you please hold that clip, please? Because I have to play it on the Fox News channel. Mike Huckabee is almost a hardcore libertarian.
Well, on this kind of stuff, I really...
Governor, there's a couple of issues here which sound as though they're technical, but they actually let the police get away with it. One is, in order, as you know, and as everyone listening to us knows, to be convicted of a crime, the government must prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's about 99% solid proof. But in order to seize your property, the government only has to prove that it is more likely than not that the property was used in some criminal activity. That's about 51% of the proof. Now, why these two different standards of proof? Because the legislatures, not Arkansas when you were the governor, but other state legislatures, desirous of this property to fill their emptying coffers, made it easier for the police to take property. So they lowered the standard of proof. The other reason that it is easy for the police to take this property is because they can take first and prove the case later. Both of these provisions are the result of intentional legislative behavior designed to make it easier for police to seize property. So the crime here is a violation of your property rights. The second crime here is that the police don't always turn the property over to the local treasurer or the state treasurer. They sometimes use this property on their own and for themselves. We recently talked about a case here on the Fox News channel, an Iraq War veteran who legally owns his weapons in North Carolina is traveling through Washington, D.C., and gets sick. And he stops at Walter Reed Army Hospital, and the police search his car where he has weapons that are lawfully owned in North Carolina, the state to which he's going. But because he came to a complete involuntary stop in Washington, where he didn't have the ownership of the guns, the police seized them. And even though they didn't charge him with a crime, he never got the guns back.
See, that kind of thing is just beyond me. I'm talking to Judge Andrew Napolitano, author of the book, It's Dangerous to Be Right When the Government is Wrong. You know him probably as the Fox News Channel senior judicial analyst. Judge, this seems unconstitutional. I mean, let me just back up. It's one thing to say that if you are convicted of a crime and you have, let's say, a tricked-out car that was your pimp mobile or your drug mobile, I get that. You take the car away from the guy because it probably was bought with drug money. After all, he is now convicted. Or you find a bunch of cash after the guy is convicted. But we're talking about pre-adjudication seizure of property.
Yes.
This can't be constitutional.
Governor, you are not only a great understander of human nature, you're also a philosopher. And there's something about human nature that when you give people power, they will push it and their ability to use it to its outermost limits. If you give the police the power to take property from a person before they've been charged with a crime, before there's been any adjudication if this property is the fruit of criminal activity, they will use that power. So the key here is to change the 50 state laws and the federal law that permits this behavior to happen so that property can't be seized until and only if the owner of the property has been convicted. I'm sitting in court one day, and a case is assigned to me in which a father comes in and says, my son used my Mercedes-Benz one night, and now the county prosecutor is driving it. So, what are you talking about? Well, my son transported a lady of the evening across the George Washington Bridge from New York to New Jersey, and he was arrested, and the lady was arrested, and the police confiscated the car because they said he used it to commit the crime. But you see, Your Honor, I own the car. My son doesn't, and I was asleep when this happened. What is the car worth? I just bought it for $150,000. Where is it now? The county prosecutor himself was driving it right outside this courtroom.
Unbelievable.
So I order the county prosecutor to return the car to the father, since the father's not charged with any crime. About 5 years later, I run into the wife of this county prosecutor in a restaurant. She says, come on over. I want you to meet my husband. Hey, Bill, this is the judge that took your car.
Took your car?
Exactly. This is the attitude of entitlement. I've changed the names to protect the privacy of these people, even though these events occurred.
I'm not sure you should.
This is the attitude of entitlement that those in government have. If you give them the power to seize something from you, to cause you harm, to take your liberty or your property, they will use that power.
You know, this is it's such an outrage to hear this kind of stuff. And why hasn't one of these cases gone to a constitutional challenge, or maybe it has, but this looks like the kind of thing the ACLU would jump all over, and on this particular issue, I'd be on their side.
So would I. The Supreme Court of the United States has not yet ruled on this because the vast majority of these seizures are the examples that you gave at the outset of this segment, Governor, in which you talked about local and state police. So they're challenged in state courts and state courts of last resort. The Supreme Court of New Jersey has authorized this stuff, but this has never made its way through the federal system. I can't see the U.S. Supreme Court condoning this, but it is absolutely horrific that innocent people, whether it's the father of the boy who took the car in the middle of the night, or whether it's this woman who had to spend 4 months to get her son or her nephew out of jail because the money from the bank aroused a dog. This is wrong. It's violative of the Constitution, which says the government can't take life, liberty, or property without due process, and due process means a trial. It doesn't mean the hunch of a dog.
You know, one of the things, Judge, that we're discovering about cash, it's very difficult to get a wad of cash that doesn't have some drug residue on it at some point. And so if a drug dog sniffs a bunch of cash that's just come maybe from a bank and there's quite a wad of bills, there's a very good likelihood that there may be some drug residue on it, and yet a person could be totally, absolutely innocent of having anything to do with drugs, but it's just a matter of the bill having been in circulation and come into exposure.
Well, that's also something that there should be an exception for in the statutes that require or that permit confiscation. Look, no confiscation should occur unless and until the person has been convicted of a crime and the crime is directly related to that which has been confiscated. The PS to this story about the government prosecutor driving the $150,000 Mercedes is that the boy was acquitted of the crime of using the vehicle to deliver a prostitute from one side of the Hudson River to the other. But, of course, that acquittal occurred long after the government had seized the car and the prosecutor was driving it.
And by the way, the depreciation on the vehicle, I guess that the father just has to suck that up and live with it?
Theoretically, the father would have a cause of action against the government. But because it happened in New Jersey, where you seize first and prove later, the courts have denied that cause of action.
All right, what's the solution for this?
Well, the solution is for people like you and me to talk about this, because generally these things happen in ways that don't get known to the public, and to arouse state legislators to change the laws in their states so that the government can't seize the property until after the person has been convicted of a crime. If the law stays where it is now, the decision to seize is so subjective with the cops at the moment that they can seize because they don't like the way they talk to you, or they can let you go if you kowtow to them. That is far too subjective a standard. In America, one of the beauties of due process is you know what is expected of you, you know the way the laws are going to be enforced, and you know you know how to deal with the police. You shouldn't have to deal with the police as if they were Gestapo in Europe in the 1930s to prevent them from seizing your property. But in many states in the Union, that's the discretionary authority that the government has given to the cops.
Well, Judge, you make even the most difficult issues easy to understand, and one of the things that I've always appreciated is your absolute adherence and commitment to the simple adherence to the Constitution of the United States. And we just need a few more people who recognize that that is a liberty. It doesn't matter whether we're conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican or none of the above. It is our Constitution that gives us the framework for liberty, and without an adherence to law as opposed to the whims of anybody, be it a politician or a police official, we've lost our liberty.
Well, then we become just as bad as the governments against which we fought wars, whether they're recent wars or whether they're wars in Europe in the 1940s. I mean, we fought these wars to be free, not only from other countries, but free from tyranny at home. If we allow the Constitution to be put in the hands of those who will subjectively decide what parts of it to obey and what parts of it to deny, then we will have tyranny at home.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, his book is It's Dangerous to Be Right When the Government is Wrong, and in this case, the government is very, very wrong.
Pleasure, Governor. God bless you.
Thank you, Judge. Great to talk to you. My gosh, this is just one of those topics that you just scratch your head and you say, look, I'm a law and order guy. I support the police. I'm absolutely on their side 99% of the time. I want to give them all the powers they need to keep us safe. But this is not police power. This is really an abuse of the law. And when people can take your property before you're even charged with a crime, much less convicted of it, it's pretty scary stuff. And you may say, well, but it might be used in. Well, then prove it. Prove it in a court of law, and then you can take the property away. But this is frightening stuff, and it ought to get you exercised. And I bet maybe it does. So maybe you'd like to spout off, because I don't have to be the only person spouting off about it. 855-840-4825. I'll take your call at 855-840-4825. Do you think the police ought to be able to take your cash, your car, maybe somebody in the car with you, without charging you with a crime or convicting you of a crime? 855-840-4825. We'll take your calls next. This is the Mike Huckabee Show.